Oh, crap. Do I got to talk again? Oh, okay. Not such a bad day. 7 a.m. on Sunday, May 7th. I am really kind of going over and over in my head one of my usual what the fucks. And it has to do with, like, what the fuck is going on as far as the right and the left? It seems like we don't even know what that is right now. And it's kind of like, well, if we don't know what it is, how are we supposed to be on the right or the left? And we're so used to saying, leftist liberal, bleeding heart liberal on the left, a left of center, centrist, right wing, alt-right, alt-left now. It's getting pretty confused, and I think the terms aren't very useful anymore. I've kind of talked of myself being kind of a liberal centrist, but that kind of seems like the neolibs and the neocons have this kind of weird center I don't want to be associated with, interventionist war kind of center. And I don't know what the hell to call myself, and I don't think many of you do either. Especially probably millennials at this point are so confused. And we're kind of past millennials, so what is it, like Generation Z or something? Or maybe that's just me watching too many zombie movies. I don't know what to even call them, but there's this kind of conservatism, and it's what the left would call alt-right, but they also call pretty much everything right of center, Nazi-esque, or Nazi, which is comical. We're kind of in, like the pre-World War II fight that happened in Europe between communists and fascists, except that the fascist side seems to be the left, and they're communists too. It's like communist-fascists. Well, I think it's implied that when you're a communist and you're trying to be a one-party system to the extent that you want to get rid of all others, you're kind of a fascist, aren't you? I don't even understand the difference in modern times between the two. You can go back in history and maybe have better eyesight because you're looking backwards in time at things that already happened and what they led to. But we're kind of still playing out the kind of communism, fascism, social democracy, socialist programs in a capitalist society. Wow, we're really mixed up and confused. And if you feel that way, you're not the only one. And I'm not saying this as somebody who hasn't done research and read books. I haven't written any yet, but I plan to. And it's a big wow. It's confusing, demoralizing, shattered our kind of view of Americanism as being kind of the not quite libertarian, but very into individual freedom, and that's protected by the Constitution, even if the mob wants to kind of run after you with pitchforks for saying whatever you said, it's protected, and we kind of have a platonic deal, like a societal deal where I'm not going to run after you with a pitchfork, and I agree not to do that to you, and that's breaking down. Not so much so as in Paris, but they're kind of traumatized. They were directly hit by multiple terrorist attacks. They have a high Muslim population. I believe Paris has had a Muslim quarter for quite a while. So it's the same like in London, where you have these areas that are kind of cordoned off, where they're almost insisting that they police their own citizenry with their own kind of religious leadership, and imposing this kind of mix of Sharia law that no British citizen outside of the Muslim quarter of London and these other areas would ever allow to be used as a law system against them, but they're kind of allowing it to be used against other Muslims, which I think is closer to the true meaning of racism, the kind of soft racism of low expectations. Let these people kind of, descend into the Sharia law, the anarchy of Sharia law, where only the people who follow it to a T are allowed to live and everyone else is punished or beheaded. It's barbarism. It is medieval barbarism. And I think most people in Europe are kind of getting really nervous because they had this acceptance and they thought that the Muslims would be nice little, assimilations where they'd come in and there'd be like this mix where we get kind of halal food, which is fucking awesome, by the way. It's like the cheapest, best food you could find in at least Queens and Manhattan. I don't know about the rest of New York City. It's even leaked out to the island, like places like Elmont, which are kind of like on the border. And they're nice people. And we kind of look at that and go, oh, like what's wrong with Muslims coming in? They're like giving me halal food. They're mixing in their culture. There's all these great spices from the Middle East. And I think that's true in places that are kind of brutal. If you don't assimilate in New York City, and you're allowed a very wide berth as far as, your old culture and everything, but if you don't assimilate in certain ways, they will fuck you up. Your kids will get beaten. See, one thing I'm kind of proud about and kind of a little ashamed about with New York City is that it's very segregated. But we get on the train, like the 7 train that people have made fun of in the past, and we're all kind of going to the same jobs, doing the same things, wearing the same clothes. You're very free not to wear a hijab. If somebody goes, "Where's your hijab, you slut?" we'll fucking beat up the guy who said that, right? And we're kind of quick with the hands. A lot of us still kind of like middle-class union workers who are not very happy about how they've been treated by the kind of liberal economy, the neoliberal economy at least. And when they see kind of people getting abused, they'll step in. I've seen this even like on YouTube, and as far as like Texas, where somebody was yelling at an obviously gay guy. He's kind of flamey, and that's fine, right? In New York, I'm used to much more kind of cringe-worthy kind of thing, right? So you see like kind of a very effeminate gay guy, it's kind of par the course. I've also kind of hung out in San Francisco a little bit. Gorgeous city, by the way. I hung out mostly in Chinatown, though. I wasn't really in the Castro Quarter much. But I passed by it. And I remember one of the funny things that happened is a girl I was with, cute little woman, that I was kind of dating at the time and, kind of like interviewing, if you know what I mean. Kind of wondering, is this one a little bit too crazy? Because I like them crazy, but then there's kind of overboard. That's another story for my Patreon. But there's this a gay bar that we walk by. And by the way, the fucking hills there, are brutal. So, just like they say, there's a lot of places you really can't drive. So you kind of have to walk. Awesome Chinatown, so many cool things I brought back, like these little like dollar store items, but like really kind of cool, kind of Asian aesthetic kind of thing, which I've always been into because I grew up with a lot of Asians. And it's just the aesthetic makes more sense to me. If I had a culture at all, I think I would have kind of been at least kind of in the periphery of Asian culture. And so it still makes more sense to me. But wow, tangent upon tangent. So as I'm walking by this gay bar, there's a bunch of guys that kind of look like the bikers from the Village People, right? Very stereotypical and kind of like awesome, right? So I'm walking by these guys, and I'm with this girl, and I think at that point I had my kind of like my arm around her, just being affectionate. I am kind of overly affectionate in public. Some of my ex-girlfriends will tell you they actually get embarrassed. So I'm walking down the street with her, not really thinking of it. And from being from New York City, a bunch of guys looking like the Village People is actually kind of cartoonish to me. I don't think, oh my God, scary biker that's going to rape me. He has chaps. I'm fucked. I'm just thinking, oh, that's kind of like, goofy. So I'm kind of smiling. I smile at the guy. I think he smiles back, thinking that I'm aching for D. I'm kind of, in a lot of ways, kind of smiling to myself in my head because it's so cartoonish. But hey, good for him, right? And he kind of looks at me, smiles back, then looks at the girl I'm with and is like, oh, you bitch. right, in this very like exaggerated tone. And it was fucking funny. It was really cute. And she actually felt like, oh, look, I got this guy that someone's jealous about, you know? That's how she took it, I think. I don't think she was scared of the kind of, obviously kind of cartoonish biker guy. Real bikers, I am a little afraid of. They tend to be what I consider kind of the alt-right as far as, I'm not talking about any specific group of them. They just kind of, they allow some of those people more in, although I've seen entire groups on YouTube that were like, will fuck you up if you like go near like one of their gay friends or something. Like there's a wide berth. Bikers are free people, right? And that's really their emphasis. So they could be like kind of the will beat you up for fucking with a gay guy and do toys for tots, and then the other side they might be kind of like white supremacists. You never really know. So that's kind of a little scary that you can't tell, because usually we can visually tell. Bikers can be kind of both sides, and that's the only place I really kind of, in my kind of read of the zeitgeist, I see any kind of anything that would even approach alt-right. When I see kind of Breitbart and stuff like that, yeah, some of their opinions are pretty stupid and out there, but they're not like the, what was it, the New Republic? I remember there was this kind of magazine that was talking about, let's give Long Island to the Jews and this area to this group and that group, and then the white people take the rest, and we kind of like keep, send the black people back to Africa. There was some kind of crazy views, like that's just not doable. I don't care what your stance is, like how are you going to do that? So you're going to force a bunch of people to move. That's not really something that we allow under our Constitution. We don't even really allow it on planes, even though they've recently tried to do shit like that. They've all apologized and, we've made all these mistakes. We're so sorry. Here's extra money. So it's something that could, potentially kind of, break apart in the sky. So it's kind of important. And kill everyone on board. We don't even allow them to get strict with this shit, right? We're just kind of a society that has a foundation, although it's getting shakier and more shattered, of kind of individual freedom and the liberalism that comes with that. It's almost like a libertarian liberalism. It kind of shares kind of what's now considered a kind of alt-right, which I don't think is really, should be called that. Maybe nationalist, without using that as like a derogatory term. Populist, perhaps, but we're so shattered that that's kind of inappropriate too. There was like splinter groups within the right and the left that are just all mixed up. You have like log cabin Republicans, fighting for, getting rid of Social Security or something, to kind of overcompensate for being, the kind of classic Christian evangelical, like more of, and that's really a small group too, these kind of like against gays, religious people. Right now they're more fighting for, like, if you are that way, you shouldn't have to like bake a cake and put a double husband on top of it. Maybe there are some people, I guess, the people who are kind of, your birth certificate says you're male, even though now you have a vagina and tits. You should go into the men's bathroom, but that's not going to be socially allowed. So you're kind of like you're kind of creating a situation where they just can't really use the bathroom. And I know it's weird. I grew up in New York. I saw my share of, women that still, were obviously kind of past the, the operation phase, but still kind of looked manly. They had like an Adam's apple, and you're kind of like, growing up in New York City, you're just like, well, have you gotten snipped yet? Because, I'm drunk enough to fuck you. I remember on Donahue, which was a show that should have been kept, but it was kind of gotten rid of by the kind of, we all have to be in for the Iraq war thing. when so many of us weren't, but they had done a good job of kind of squelching that. That's kind of where like this kind of neocon, neoliberal crossover happened, where you had to be kind of for the Iraq War to be in politics and to be on the side of America, right? It turned to like America. We're going to take revenge and all that stuff on mostly the wrong people, unfortunately. So they're just kind of mixed up, just kind of what's American, what's not American. The left is conflating open borders with Americanism. It's never been that. In fact, open borders is so anti whatever nation that it's in that it can't be. It's just a ridiculous thing to say. Having a loose, kind of generous immigration system where people come in and they get help, that may be more American, and I kind of agree with that, where, okay, we're going to give you kind of at least like a high school education through maybe the local college. Like there was all these like ESL classes in the New York City college I went to, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we should be doing that, and there should be like government grants because they run education, they run immigration. So the federal government should kind of chip in for such programs. I agree with that. But so many things are kind of an issue by issue basis, and people could see me as alt-right or alt-left depending on their, their stance as, the other side. And it's getting pretty ridiculous. I don't think the Antifa alt-left is much of the alt-left even, and they're being kind of mislabeled. You have like the Antifa forces, the anti-fascists that are pretty damn fascist and pretty violent, and I don't think that much of the left is like that. They can kind of be whipped up to that if you do a good enough job of propagandizing the other side and saying, these aren't free speech advocates, these are Nazis. These are like, the fascist people we're fighting against. And then they're kind of extrapolating the old fight of communists against fascists that happened in Europe prior to World War II. And now they're kind of playing that out, even though the kind of situation has changed quite a bit, and we're not even in Europe. We're a different animal altogether, and a lot of things are kind of being extrapolated or, kind of bumper sticker logic. The people who want to say that feminism is bad are fascists. Really? If someone's complaining about the fascism of feminism, and then you turn around and say, well, they're fascist for doing it, it's kind of an obvious kind of refraction, or what's it called? It's kind of like a bounce off. I'm not sure what the bigger, more astute word would be. But it's kind of like, I'm going to accuse you of what I'm doing. And it's all mixed up. You have people making fun of people that are not even like in the same kind of argument. It's really weird, and it's really conducive to really just violence and confusion. If someone's trying to confuse and destabilize the populace, they've succeeded. We don't know what the fuck is going on. And we think that the kind of NASCAR watching, people who listen to kind of, Alex Jones, and they're really into certain aspects of Trumpism, that they're the kind of this enemy, but we kind of agree on like a bunch of things, like TPP, etc., and like a lot of the trade stuff, especially if you are kind of a quote-unquote Bernie bro. And what the hell's a Bernie bro? Did those people even exist, or was that kind of a propaganda stream from the Clinton campaign? It's fucking ugly. It's this ugly mess, and we need to kind of look at it more on an issue-to-issue basis and say, I'm pro-GMO or anti-GMO, or even just to get to that point, which is kind of like a simplistic bumper sticker. What about GMOs? Are you for or against? Like, what are you actually talking about? And so many people will say, oh, the other side doesn't know what they're talking about. You could always find somebody on the other side that has no clue. When you get to kind of more the kind of like Antifa fascist, or like the really kind of far right, that's kind of approaching fascism, which I don't consider most of the alt-right to be that, but you could always find someone to say something stupid, right? Because they're humans. To err is human, and when I say that, and I've probably mentioned this before, it means that we're basically a stream of mistakes until we're not. A stream of miscalculations, misrepresentations, observations that have just, missed the mark and may not even be in the right argument. I've gone through some stages. I think a lot of people who have kind of been, they call themselves red pilled, are actually more consistent than they say, because they're kind of joining, the quote unquote alt right, but they're keeping a lot of the same views, like respect for individual freedoms, like freedom of speech. But now they may also kind of give freedom of religion a chance, right? And maybe they're for or against it, but it's, as far as, should I have to bake a cake for a wedding I, religiously against? So there's like all these issues that we're not getting out of the box. In fact, it's like boxes within boxes within boxes. It's a kind of like a Russian doll in box form, and it's not conducive to any kind of track work. I know people use the word solution a lot. I don't really think that there are solutions, but you lay down the tracks so that people can kind of get on the right train and kind of solve their own personal problems, right? And you want to help them, because that's all you can do. You can't just like hand out to everybody, because it doesn't work. It doesn't help anybody. It actually may, some people would argue it's actually worse to have kind of a you're on welfare forever society. And we do have, as I've gone through certain kind of problems myself and needed some help, we do have this kind of, you're not disabled enough. We have these kind of checks and balances. They're just not being done very well. And it's kind of hard for me to kind of go through something and it's like, good. They're kind of forcing people to work, and then kind of turn around and say like, well, maybe I shouldn't for like the next month until I get this issue taken care of, which can make work for me kind of dangerous. And they're, they don't really understand my issue. They're not really trained for that. It's more of a disappointment, though. I'm not against a system that kind of tries to keep people from taking advantage of it. I kind of applaud those measures. I just wish that they could do it more intelligently. And that's often my kind of issue. Like I have an issue with Medicaid in a lot of places where, the liberal left has kind of taken over. Medicaid is kind of really shitty. When it's really easy to get on Medicaid, you have just way too many people on Medicaid, and they can't supply the services that they need to, even with kind of like private charities and grants and federal money and state money and now the county money and the city money. And you get a kind of another what the fuck. Well, with all this money coming in, and with a place like New York City spending so much on Medicaid, why does Medicaid suck? Why is it that me and my Spanish friends go there, and the doctors don't speak either language? Sometimes not even Chinese, which is like the third largest language in New York. The second is always Spanish. Right, we are a mix of English and Spanish. I mean, that's just universally true. And like, I think every state, but not all the territories, right? Like Samoa and places like that, I think it's more, it may not be Spanish. It may be like a local kind of language, and then Spanish, right? So it's really the number 3 spot. In New York, it's Chinese, right? So you have doctors that are serving a populace that speaks Spanish, Chinese, and English mostly, and then you have doctors that don't speak any of those languages, and they're very hard to. It's very hard to communicate and to actually get the help you need. Like clinical systems are already kind of shitty. That's like the lowest tier of kind of healthcare, and then you get somebody who doesn't really understand what you need, and also has their hands tied as far as what to do for you. But they have all these rules about taking certain notes and blah 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 blah, and they had to take all these tests to be able to kind of operate in America. But it doesn't matter because they're not. It's not their first language. You have to be kind of first language to first language when it comes to a doctor, right? And people just aren't getting that because they don't want to be discriminatory. They don't want to give you a Spanish doctor just because you're Spanish, even though there's plenty of them and they'd be able to help more. In fact, I think the Spanish populace actually does get a little better treatment. English-speaking populace is so few and far between that's pretty hard. Chinese can be pretty hard sometimes. And then we have like the other populaces. Like if you go into kind of like a public hospital, like a blank general hospital, you're going to get like signs in like 19 languages, and all of them are saying like we have translators available, and I find that really really doubtful. And they never come in. They never have like a translator when you're in with the doctor, right? I hope they sometimes do that. But I've never seen that. I kind of wanted that, and because I had doctors who didn't speak much English, and it really was hurting my care. And I didn't want to stay on the dole. I wanted to get better and get to work, right? Because work isn't just about making money, and of course we all desperately need to do that to have any sort of life. But it's also about kind of the pride you feel of being an adult, of going into a store and saying, "Hey, let me pay for that for you." Because I'm an adult and I work and I can, buy things. It hurts when you're dependent on like a family member, even if it's a sibling, and you go into a store and they got to buy everything for you. I mean, that fucking drags your esteem down to a new low, right? I mean, it would do that to anybody. You feel like you've lost your adulthood. And that's understandable if you haven't been kind of raised in a system where, you're kind of entitled to much more, even if it's crappy. It's like, yeah, I'm entitled to health care. Yeah, but it's fucking, really shitty health care. Or I've mentioned like in Canada where you have to kind of go like 3 counties over to get to an MRI machine. What happens when people are more seriously injured and really need a quick MRI, right? They can't wait 3 weeks. There's stories of people losing limbs because of a simple operation that took like months and months and months to get, that they needed, pretty much immediately, and they just couldn't do it. The system could not do it. It's scary that everything is so confusing, like, we kind of pop out these bumper stickers. I had a comment on one of my, it was actually one of my videos, I think. No, it was one of my first Spreaker shows. And, Northern Europe or Sweden, they do this great job with, public health care. There's whatever universal single payer, whatever buzzword. That's the other thing. Like everything's called like 18 different things. What the fuck is Medicare for all as opposed to universal health care? And it's become boring. Oh my God, so boring to kind of like, go into these kind of detailed differences of things. So we don't. So we just kind of use a lot of terms interchangeably that it's inappropriate to do, because they kind of do have a different meaning. So now we're stuck with like, 8 phrases for universal health care. And is that even the right phrase for me to use right now? I have no idea. I'm just confused. And I think I'm saying this not to just kind of whine about it, but I know that so many people are. And I think the first stage, like knowing is half the battle. Remember those G.I. Joe commercials that they would have at the end of every G.I. Joe cartoon? Don't touch wires that are like, in water that are falling and like spritzing fucking, electricity everywhere. Actually some pretty important things because kids are stupid. They're like, oh, I'll just touch the wire and I'll be able to, jab my friend with it. Yeah, it's way more than, electricity than you think it is. Especially if you're standing in a puddle. We're very confused. We have these kind of streams within society that have their own zeitgeist, and they're kind of, going in different directions, and they've demonized other sides, and usually, because one person that they see as being this is, representative of now everybody, and we're all kind of individuals, and we have kind of these mixes. We're all a mix now. Right? I mean, if you want a war in Syria, are you conservative? Are you neoliberal? Are you neocon? What the fuck are you? I would say just a dick that wants to kind of like, intervene and go to war. And I think Trump was kind of forced into this because he doesn't even have the kind of people he needs in his cabinet and, advising him because they're all just kind of in a stream in a imaginary kind of world. But we have so many streams of imaginary worlds, and we're all claiming to be the reality. It's kind of like what happens with religion. You have, we're the ones that are, represent the one true God. No, we are. And then you got to fight, right? Or it eventually boils down to that. Even in the Abrahamic religions that profess to, be peaceful. We are in that same kind of multiple stream, multiple reality zeitgeist. And there's no kind of common ground anymore that we can kind of quickly go to. We have to really work at it. People have to have some pretty deep conversations and they go, no, I agree with that. Why are you misrepresenting me and all the people who, are on my side as thinking this way? And it's like, well, because like the one guy we talked to from your side thought this way. We get like Ben Shapiro kind of talking about a guy who's pretty squarely on the right and kind of a conformist of the right as well. And he, of like, the kind of most right views he can have. And he says things that are kind of not representative of the right at all, or at least most of the right. Just maybe other kind of fellow kind of extreme right conformists. And the rest of the right is like, oh, well, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, I don't agree with it. So he kind of shuts somebody down, but at the same time, maybe not. Not my point of view, more his point of view. I remember him kind of talking about transgender as being delusional and why should we help you kind of go through your delusion. And then he would quote kind of these suicide rates and all that stuff. And he'd kind of misattribute a lot. It's dirty, ugly, not based on, even like climate science isn't really based on science anymore. We know we're warming, but we don't know why. We think we're in these, these kind of weird systems. There's even been the attributions to kind of sunspot activity. And we have this problem that we can't look at pseudoscience and science and tell the difference most of the time. Because someone's just going to say, we did this and we got these results. Like, unless you know every machine, every program, every person involved, you have no fucking clue, right? You don't know if it's accurate. I mean, it might just be an inaccurate machine that always kind of, goes too high or something. I'm not saying that. I don't think that's the case. We have, peer review systems that aren't really working anymore. Because, you have to be kind of on some sort of political side. And that's the thing. It's turned so political that we don't have a reality check anymore, because every reality check can just be kind of written off. So we're in a situation where there's really no truth to go to, and we're all trying to kind of squash the other truth. Or I don't really care what other, like one guy who claims to be this says. Like I said, I don't consider it representative most of the time. Oh, look at the, Gavin McInnes. He's, maybe he's a little bit of a knucklehead. He is Scottish, right? And he kind of proudly states that I'm Scottish. We're kind of violent and we're knuckleheads, and we're kind of soccer fanatics, and so he goes into kind of like a little tirade about that, which is kind of funny. There's a bit of performance art involved in a lot of this. No one thinks all Scottish are really like all knuckleheads. And he kind of goes into that, and he kind of, that's funny, yeah, He's talking about being Scottish and wearing kilts and, flashing people as balls and whatever. And he fights back. Like, if someone goes to punch him or mace him, he punches him in the face. And, that Gavin McInnes is now, like, representative of all the people on the right, who most of them don't go to college campuses because they don't give a shit. You can have your fucking stream. I don't care. Have your own little reality. I know, mine is probably just as twisted. And I'm talking as like kind of, if somebody was like really kind of self-reflective, whatever stance they take, it would be kind of like, unless you're Antifa or, the kind of Gavin McInnes crowd, you don't really give a fuck. If someone's going to be violent, you're just going to kind of, meet on the internet with some fucking like, cube chat or something where you kind of, have like 18 pictures of people and some kind of crappy video phone type looking thing. And that's it. Oh, by the way, I've kind of added coconut oil to my coffee only now. It's so fucking tasty with the grass-fed butter. But my cholesterol is kind of high, and I need more of the kind of good cholesterol, which, coconut oil is supposed to be quote-unquote good, HDL or whatever. So I'm kind of only doing that because I don't want to kind of add too much to my lipid profile. My triglycerides are too high. Tangent aside, even when it comes to kind of healthcare and the information on the internet, you almost have to like pick a side politically. Am I for or against vaccines? Which is kind of crazy. Like some vaccines are good. Maybe there are some mistakes with some other ones. Maybe they shouldn't have mercury in them or something like that. There's usually some sort of kind of common sense middle ground with it, or maybe some vaccine. Maybe it's not some sort of giant conspiracy to make everyone retarded. Maybe it's just. They've been putting this thing in there and it works, and it's the only thing they have that kind of works. And so they keep putting like mercury or whatever in the vaccine to get a reaction, and ends up it does more harm than good. But we're not really there yet as far as the jury. But then you watch, Vaxxed or whatever, and like, look, every kid is retarded, kids get a vaccine and their head explodes, and I'm misrepresenting Vaxxed right there. It's a much more nuanced film, right? I haven't watched that much of it. I've seen snippets, so I don't know. But I can't watch everything because, to fucking learn everything and to really know is impossible. And I'm not going to sit here and say, well, that's what the journalists are for, because they've never really been that. They've never been like the truth tellers. They can be the kind of truth of the event, like an event happened. 3 people died, like that can be confirmed and reconfirmed and, confirmed again. And those kind of facts, through kind of like the bullet points of professional journalism, they're not doing that a lot, right? Or it's kind of like, this happened, here's the bullet points, and here's my 18 paragraphs about why Trump has a tiny penis and small hands. we've kind of become rebels without a clue, and most people who are kind of having their voice heard are kind of in that category, while the rest of us are just kind of sitting there like, what the fuck? Hence the name of my show, right? It's just, it's disappointing. It's like grossly disappointing. And people go the other way and say, well, if you didn't deny man-made catastrophic climate change, which, people kind of working outside of the system kind of have denied it pretty astutely, it sounds. But again, it could be pseudoscience. I don't know. If you're not on that train, then you're the problem, right? But saying that there's kind of I've seen the other side of it, and I kind of see it both ways. Oh, by the way, I recently found out I'm a Gemini. I know that that's kind of superfluous and probably doesn't mean anything. But I always wondered why I had kind of, I saw both sides. And I went, that makes everything, either inconclusive or, this one fact between the two is, kind of seems to be established. There's like always just kind of utilization of both streams, going as far back as kind of the 9/11 debunking, when there was a lot of like theories for that, and I kind of went into that and was like, oh, it's an inside job, and then I kind of saw some of the debunks and was like, oh, wait, yeah, that sounds kind of just as reasonable. And I didn't make a decision as far as, what's the conspiracy or not, or is there a conspiracy or not. It really actually taught me more about how you could sound so scientific. I mean, if you've ever been into writing sci-fi or reading sci-fi or even watching it, very little science can make a lot of science fiction. And it could sound totally plausible that, in 100 years we'll be not just shooting across the galaxy, but across the universe with some sort of mind bullets, and some weird worm-shaped thing like in Dune that can kind of use its superior mind to get us across the universe. Although I think they're really saying like the tri-galaxies. For your edification, we have two kind of like little sister galaxies, and little sister. Right, we're like a big spiral galaxy. We have these kind of cloud galaxies that are pretty close to us that kind of orbit us. They're called the lesser and greater, I think, Magellanic cloud galaxies. And some good sci-fi actually kind of refers to that, like the Tri-Galaxy Commission, because that would be kind of our first step as far as being intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic. Anyway, I just had to do that. I love that song. So we're confused. And what's funny is, like, let's say I turn on some, 90s rock during the election. It was just like every 3 seconds, I would hear a song. It would seem like, at the end of every song was the same Obama commercial, vote for Hillary. Like they were pushing it massively hard. They must have spent huge amounts of money to kind of get that, I want to be left alone crowd and just listen to my fucking, Matchbox 20 or whatever. And now I'm getting kind of inundated with many more commercials than I've ever gotten before. And they're all the same, like, of a set of 3, like Obama directly talking to me and telling me I have to vote for Hillary. And it was really annoying. I almost wanted to turn on country so I can get like a vote for Trump thing so it would be less annoying. But yeah, I'm not going to go that far. I don't like too much country. We are like shattered and confused and kind of in this adolescence that we've came out of, and we're kind of going to like this young adulthood as a society. And I mean that as kind of the Western world. We probably can't really do much for the rest of the world yet. But as far as kind of the Western world, which includes, North and South America in many ways, bumper sticker, all these countries are third world, is kind of quickly changing. And as they become more advanced and the Western world kind of, they join the Western world as far as like more like first or second world countries. I don't know, do second world countries exist? Is that a thing? I never heard that apply to anybody. I guess maybe that's what they're becoming. We are all over the place. And often it's just like one person saying something and suddenly there's a new movement, but it's like, okay, PewDiePie gets XYZ amount of viewers, and, he got some guy in India to put up like a Nazi sign, and it was really funny. But I'm kind of a fan of like, inappropriate humor. And now he's some Nazi movement, like some weird kind of Swedish Nazi movement. I forget where he's from. It would be really funny if it was like Norway or something like that. I think the communists and the Russian communists and the Nazis actually fought over that, and I'm pretty sure that Norway isn't really big on either. So where are we? What the fuck? Well, we kind of have to. We have to, in my opinion, look at the situations involved and get more detailed and historical. Utilize historicity, like, look at kind of the flows of things and what's really been going on, and kind of go at it one by one, and hopefully kind of keep in mind that it has to be kind of integrated, and then that the cogs have to kind of interlock. So let's say you have a Social Security system that takes care of you after a certain amount of disability, but then what happens before that? What happens if you're in that age where they don't want to give you disability or something like that, right? Like how does the system work? What are the kind of, programs to help people out where they pay in a little? They pay what they can kind of afford, which often ends up being like nothing. So how do we kind of, how do we create a system where, you go from stage A to B to C kind of smoothly, depending on what's going on with you and the help you need and the help that we want to provide, because as a society, we want to make sure that safety net is for us too, without destroying our, lives, as far as, now healthcare is $27,000 a month. Or let's use some realer numbers. What is it, like $12,000 a year? So it's like $1,000 a month. So if you have like $2,000 a month, so it's 50% on healthcare and 50% on housing, and I guess you just don't eat. I guess then you have to get food stamps, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't eat. The systems that we have to look at in that kind of way. And we're not, because we're caught up in the politics of everything in a very junior high school type of way. Trump said grab pussy, right? How dare you with Hillary, but she's going to be the first woman president. All sorts of kind of like back and forth with just kind of spiteful, mean craziness. And it's very disappointing. The politicians aren't talking like adults either, right? And however way, let's say Trump is talking, Mr. 45 there, we should be looking at what he's actually planning to do and taking a real look at it, not a political look at it, as far as somebody told me that it's a Muslim ban as opposed to a non-vetting ban. We really should have been talking about, there's a bunch of African countries that should be on that list because they don't have working governments, right? So they should have been like, how do we let them in? And that kind of was the executive order. Like, okay, we need like 90 days to kind of figure out how we let them in, in what situation, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure the Trump administration is making all sorts of mistakes too, right? Pretty young administration. It's 115 days or something like that, or 105 days. I don't even know. Even though I see it all day, it's just like everything kind of melds together. And we're left with like, how do we, as far as being the kind of class of people paying attention, how do we kind of help things move along in the right direction when we don't know what the right direction is? There's no consensus, and none of the streams seem to be in the real world. They all seem to be kind of professing that, but at the same time being completely delusional. And I think that's maybe the first step. Okay, this is all kind of fucking crazy. People are kind of displaying mental illness more often than not. And that's unfortunate with the people that want to get involved. You usually have this kind of, at least 10% of them are going to be always joiners for whatever cause. We used to say when I was in organizations in college, 10% will always join. The other 10% will never join. You don't want any of those. You want the other 80%, and to kind of recruit from that. The person that keeps coming up to you like, I want to be in it, is like, oh yeah, no. But unfortunately, these are the people that run like college organizations, right? Kind of putting down myself in that. Although currently I don't think I'd take part too much in any of those things because it's just not real. It's like this microcosm that has nothing to do with the real world. And my college sacrificed all the real world things. We had clubs for like ham radio. We even had I remember we had a ham radio room in our student union that no one had ever gone into while I was there. There was like a metalworking club that was one guy who did like sculptures and got tons of money for it, and that was the only reason he was there. He had like his own foundry. He's like a bigwig in politics there. We gave up like all of those cool clubs that would have helped us like maybe discover that we really wanted to be photographers or something. Right, and there would have been a little help to kind of like find the right cameras and something in some sort of photography club, but instead we got every ethnicity imaginable and every political stance they could take. So you wouldn't just have like the Jewish club. You would have the Orthodox, Reform, and Jews for Jesus, plus like 5 other clubs. I used to joke that it would get down to, like one-eyed Iranian Jews that want to teach Chinese, something ridiculous, or maybe like a Byzantine underwater basket weaving club would be the closest we would get to any kind of useful club that might actually teach somebody something. Because, basket weaving, at least you'd learn. You'd drown while you're doing it probably, but at least you'd learn basket weaving. So if you survive the club, you're one hell of a basket weaver. We're stupid. We're stupefied. We're not, permanently moronic. We're just in a stage where everything is so stupefied by all these hits from these different streams of stupidity, of delusion, really. The people in there who are really kind of running the things are pretty, I don't know, maybe they are kind of low IQ, kind of not the people you want leading. And I see this a lot with I remember a lot of leftist clubs. And this was like 10 years ago at least. I don't even remember the last time I was in college because I went back once for accounting. Don't worry about that. Actually, that was about 10 years ago, 2006. So 11, 12. We I remember seeing these clubs and meeting some of the people who were in there, and these were people you didn't want to be in charge of, like, their own lives. Like, you were literally thinking, wow, I wonder if I could help them get social services. As a compassionate person, I would think like that. And they were kind of like in charge of some club with like the biggest budget on campus, which was fucking crazy. But at the same time, who cares? It's a college club. It's a college organization. They're not a big deal to the rest of us, except to kind of this kind of, like Milo, Hamina, I can't even pronounce the name. Is it just like Eulanopolis or something? Somebody tell me how to simply pronounce it. I'll probably have to kind of like bring up my computer to, help me pronounce it. Because I can't tell from all the vowels and consonants that are mixed up in there. Watch, it's like something, really easy, and I'm kind of missing it. We like I said, Milo is making a ton of money going to these college campuses, and good for him. I like a lot of what he says. I like how he does it. He's very entertaining. And of course, there's like people that I can't stand on the like far left that he makes fun of that really deserve to be made fun of, I think, or at least call themselves far left, identify with maybe the alt left. I just see some groups as being very non-liberal, like Antifa. They're really the fascists in the party, right? At least on college campuses. Definitely not the right-wingers don't seem to be fascists at all. But that's on college campuses. I'm sure, maybe in Nebraska, the right-wingers are, more like white power people. And that's like a whole world to me that like I can't even believe exists, right? Because I'm from New York City, and like just the thought that there would be, these kind of conclaves of people who are still kind of KKK white power people. Yes, they are much smaller than they used to be, and they've been kind of politically discounted. But to think that there are still some, I remember that my brother, but this was again like a long time ago, back when these things were at least seemed to be bigger. Maybe they all made a deal to kind of hide on some place on the internet I don't know about. But I remember he was with a death metal band, and they were on tour. I think it was a campaign for musical destruction. He was Brutal Truth. He was a drummer. And then we had Marauder, which was like an all-Spanish death metal band. And they were doing like Nazi salutes and stuff because the whole crowd was like full of skinheads that were obviously, wearing like Nazi symbols and stuff. So they thought they were going to get killed. In fact, I think at one point they had to kind of bolt because they didn't do a good enough job claiming to be Nazis. So like everyone had to bolt before they got killed. So yeah, there may be some like, bar in like Wisconsin where this shit is popular. But those aren't the people you're talking about. Those aren't the people that you're protesting. Completely different mindset. You're kind of like protesting Dinesh D'Souza and people like that, who I think is kind of dickish and too far to the right for me. Same with Ben Shapiro. But their freedom of speech directly affects ours. And I've been taught this growing up as more of a classic liberal kind of stance, that if you take away the freedom of speech of one group, you take away all freedom of speech because you create a mechanism in order to take away freedom of speech. And it's a dangerous sword to hand to any state, to hand to any private organization, to hand to, Google or Facebook. Don't give them the sword of censorship because it's going to just be used wider and wider until you kind of say something on the internet yelling at an ex-girlfriend for being a cunt or something. I think I just got discounted by half the left for using that word. But you know what I mean. When someone's really being like nasty and kind of like, putting out like propaganda against you and all this stuff and calling people up personally and saying, my boyfriend my ex-boyfriend has AIDS or something. like really fucked up shit to do. And I think everyone would kind of agree with the C word on that. Or he got me pregnant, and she's not even pregnant. Like these kind of typical, really big C, that word. And now you kind of like it's a hate crime, because you're in some sort of like verbal argument, but because there's proof of a verbal argument that you were in, use the C word, and now it's a hate crime. Now you're a misogynist or whatever the hell the new word is. Patriarchal, who knows? And now, maybe you got feminists kind of like, banning you from, from all sorts of things and reporting you and like kind of putting you in Facebook jail, which is the weirdest thing. Like I see on a lot of the websites I go to, like I just got out of Facebook jail and these people are comedians, funny as fuck people. And they'll do like, all sorts of cool kind of 4chan memes that everybody loves. And then somebody will decide to get offended. And I remember there was this one girl who I fucking love, at least for her sense of humor. Her rack is kind of a bonus. And she's kind of like a southern girl from, I think, North Carolina. Cool little chickadee. And I remember she said something about wanting to throw babies out of cars, like she would see babies on the highway and want to throw them out of the car, something kind of like fucking crazy and mean, but obviously a joke. And she's like a big memer, right? So it was kind of a comedian, and I know she got reported for this, but she also got kicked out of the kind of club we were in, even though she was one of the most entertaining fucking people in it. And I remember talking to one of the admins, who was another sweet girl, and, not like mean, but she's like, I had to defend, because I have children, I have to defend children. And I was like, well, you're just censoring her. You're not defending children. Like you're not going to her house while she's like, burning babies and putting them on sticks, putting them on spikes and like saving the babies. You're just kind of, ruining a joke. And I really got like a really, she was going to rip my eyes out with her claws, and we were kind of friendly, and it was like, shit, I kind of went too far, didn't I? But the kind of extreme meme 4chan thing is funny as fuck. And just seeing this kind of, what the fuck of people kind of like saying they're standing up and virtue signaling, I'm sure she felt like she had some, was kind of defending, because I think she kind of figured that this girl might do it, like she was that crazy. And that seemed ridiculous to me, but didn't seem ridiculous to her. So in her view, maybe she's defending things. But from, most of the rest of us that were kind of friends of hers, this memer, right? The mean, crazy memer. We were just like, well, this is kind of the level we're at as far as jokes. They're fucking crazy now, right? And we had this cool group that did that. I won't mention any names of groups or anything. So what? Another kind of microcosm that doesn't matter this shit. But it's just kind of an example. Because when I said, are you defending kids with this? Or are you just kind of, ruining a joke? It was like, oh my God, like the most hated statement ever uttered. And luckily it was a PM, or I would have kind of gotten, the Facebook police would have kind of come running after me. And I would have been reported, And I told her, yeah, come on, easy. But I think her opinion of me is like, eternally diminished. We have oh wow, I'm over an hour. We have, and I'm just kind of touching the surface of this, the most confused generation ever. And I don't mean like, the people in college right now. I mean like the people on the planet in the first world right now have no fucking idea what's happening. Much of their gut, they're told they can't trust. And much of the people they're supposed to be able to trust, they're told they can't trust. So there's this kind of like double whammy where we're kind of getting hit by both sides, where both sides are saying fake news all the time at this point, and none of them are saying, well, what about both sides' freedom to speak? I hate SJWs, but they're allowed to speak. I would never say ban them from Facebook. But people on the right, I'm sure there are, people who are, closer to that, more of what they think the alt-right is, kind of like the fascist alt-right. I'm sure there's, like I said, I'm kind of assuming there's a group like that in Wisconsin in a bar. And maybe they're on the internet in some kind of way, and they want to kind of squash the speech of, some of the SJW groups. But then what they have to make fun of, all right? I mean, you want them to talk so that you could say, hey, look at this idiot. I'm not this idiot. So it's if you want to make fun of the so-called alt-right, wouldn't you want them to speak so you can make fun of them all the time? If you're kind of winning the debate, which is already debatable, all right, like what does that even mean? If you're kind of winning the debate, then you want them to have free speech because, you could always kind of squash them, right? But when you start losing, suddenly free speech is, as long as it doesn't, everything is kind of compared to yelling fire in a crowded movie theater, totally inappropriately. The people that put out buy gold now, the economy is about to collapse, they're a lot closer to people that maybe we should kind of like, mark as being doubtful, or make them kind of put up a disclaimer. Like, everything I'm saying is bullshit. But we're okay with the kind of conspiracy, a go-go economy about to crash every time you open up Facebook. We're okay with that. But we're, if it's the enemy, it seems to be the big deal. The enemy of our stream of delusion. And, of course, their stream of delusion is just as delusional. But we never kind of self-reflect and go, wait, maybe I'm not as wholly right as I think. And I'm saying that kind of like in both senses, WH and H, wholly right. So what do we do? Like, where do we go from here to kind of create a better forum where we can kind of look at some of this stuff that they're blatantly kind of showing us, but not being part of it and just kind of observing from the outside and being more like journalists of that. But not just journalists. Maybe we want to start organizations and forums and where we kind of put people on stage as far as how they're wrong with these things and allow people who aren't in these kind of imaginary streams of delusion to kind of, talk amongst themselves and kind of maybe come up with some solutions that we could suggest, maybe send to the White House. Hey, we got a plan for healthcare. Look at this. Yeah, these are all the people who are actually involved in healthcare, from, the lowliest kind of candy striper all the way up to the administrators of giant hospital chains and, former HMOs and all that kind of stuff. Maybe we can get some of those people together and have more like a reasonable chat and come up with some solutions. How to do that, I'm always kind of thinking of. And if I come up with how to do that, I guess I'll put that out there pretty quickly and pretty strongly. Now, my cheap ass might even, boost some Facebook posts or something, which I'm known not to do very much because I'm a cheap fuck. We need a new forum for this. something that I guess in some sort of social way at least kind of squeezes out these kind of delusional streams, whether they're the right, the left, the center, warmongering, that it's just honest, and that we don't have this kind of fear of, oh, I'm going to be labeled this and that. And I think we need kind of an underground forum where people of like mind, as far as fairness, civility, individual rights, can kind of come up with some tracks we can lay to kind of help people out, and so they can go in a direction that helps them. And there are the services available, and there aren't like these kind of donut holes, like with we used to have with medication for the elderly. How do we do that, right? I'm sure it's been tried before. I'm sure, there are kind of venues, but every time I see some sort of new kind of social venue, it's already kind of infiltrated by idiots. And I'm not talking about people who are like temporarily like stupefied. I'm talking about, really should not be on the, at one of the adult tables. Maybe it should be called the adult table. And, we should be pretty strict with certain things, but not in the way that, Facebook wants to be strict or whatever, like alt-right version of Facebook. Who knows? More strict on like you're abusive to somebody. You weren't like making a point. But who decides that, right? I mean, a lot of these things are kind of fanciful dreams of mine. And I hope that we can kind of get to a place where we can kind of, at least in small groups, talk about how we can kind of deal with these problems so that the next generation isn't as fucked as the current millennials and a lot of the situations that everybody is in now, from the youngest to the oldest, from the poorest to the richest. Things are just kind of mixed up and fucked up, and this hodgepodge of agencies and organizations that kind of half do their job, sometimes actually make things worse. It's a mess. And when Trump said that, I actually was kind of feeling like, oh yeah, well, I mean, everything's a mess, yeah. But I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and kind of, we need this like giant revolution to, all that would do is take care of our excess population, and I'm not sure that I'm for that. Then we'll just kind of increase, what's it called? Increase immigration to, make up for the people that all died. That's not really a solution. So if anyone has any ideas how to kind of minimize these delusional streams, how to kind of, other than what I'm doing, which is kind of, this whole awareness thing is pretty weak. Like, oh yeah, I can make people aware that so many people are delusional, but getting people together to actually kind of create solutions, or these kind of solution paths, these tracks we must lay for the next generation to kind of, transition to adulthood and, have a successful adulthood. I don't know how to do that, and I'd love to hear some ideas. So I look forward to your interactions, and I hope that some of what I'm saying makes sense. I'm sure it kind of rang true with a lot of you, and I hope that you could kind of have some maybe a tighter expertise in one small area of it, like healthcare, like mental health, like the food stamp system, like whatever you may be expert in. If you can kind of throw us some hints as far as what's really going on the ground, in your specific situation, or the specific agency you've dealt with, or maybe the newspaper you work for, and just kind of like some of the inside kind of knowledge that we need to go forward. I really hope that you'll share that with us, and that we can kind of go forward from there. All right, so much love. Have a good one.